So there are going to be people who, they could teleport into one place, they can teleport into another place, very kind of back to back, just like you're joining a Zoom call here and you have back to back Zoom calls. You could have back to back sort of hollow presence events that you do.
Hey there, and welcome to yet another episode of the World of Presentations podcast brought to you by us at Presentation Agency 356 Labs. I'm Boris, the founder of the company and your host. And today we have someone that was recommended to us in another episode. Now, that does not mean that this is the only reason why she's here with us today. I have personally been following our next guest's work from a long time, and I'm super happy to finally welcome Yulia Barnakova to our podcast. Yulia is one of those people that's always on the look for what's next in visual communication, and that's actually what the topic for today is. What's next? Yulia, welcome to the podcast. Glad we are finally doing this.
Great. Thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be here with your audience and always looking to share kind of what's next, what's coming our way. And last year was certainly quite a transformational year. And I think there's a lot more ahead. So looking forward to digging in.
Perfect. I have my notes on the left-hand side, you on the right-hand side. This is for the people that are going to just be listening to this one. If you're watching on YouTube, you will be seeing me going left and right. Now let's start. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because your background is very nice, like very interesting. Like, let's go there first.
Sure. Well, thank you. So I'm currently a digital and innovation consultant. So I'm working with large enterprises to really help them understand what is happening in the future. So what are some of the emerging technology shifts that are coming their way, and how can they prepare today for what's coming tomorrow? So we look at things like AI, augmented virtual reality, 5G, blockchain, all those things. Kind of how are all those technologies transforming industries, and how do you prepare? And so my personal passion is visual communication and presenting. So I like many of you listening, I'm sure, I'm just very enthusiastic about good storytelling and presentation. So stories that are impactful and, that just look good visually. So that's why I'm kind of always thinking about how do you make that impact in a more effective way through new technology. And in particular, how do you combine kind of 3D and augmented and virtual reality to kind of create that next generation of experiences? So I think that there's a huge opportunity to, for example, combine things that we know, like PowerPoint, that is basically like a sandbox for creativity. There's so much that you can do there, but then put PowerPoint, for example, into a 3D virtual world, and let's do some interactivity there with that. Let's take a 3D model, take that off the slide, and then put that into your space and walk around that 3D model. And now instantly the presentation becomes your entire environment, versus just that 2D slide. And, my big focus is, how do you prepare? It's like, what are the skills that you're going to need? And how do you think differently and design differently for that future world? And so that's been my focus recently. And it's something that I also share on my YouTube channel and blogs and LinkedIn and all those things. So yeah, it's a really fun space for sure.
That is guaranteed. Like, just you saying all of those things for sure sounds fun. That is 100% guaranteed. You already mentioned a few things. You already said, hey, this will require a change of your mindset, maybe a change of your skills. Let's start a little bit slowly here, because obviously, as you said at the beginning, last year was insane. We're recording this in 2021, but in February, the 2nd of February, 2021, last year was crazy. Let's start a little bit with what changed, like in terms of technology and in terms of how and what technology enabled us to do. I saw that when we were discussing the episode, you actually wrote me a little bit about, hey, there are changes in the video world, there are changes in the audio, there are changes in the interactivity, right? What is going on in there? Because having in mind what we're going to cover a little bit later, these are, I consider, the basics, right? So let's start with the basics: video, audio, interactivity, and anything else that you want to mention here.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, last year we call it kind of the great digital acceleration because, I mean, if you look at, there's different statistics. I mean, McKinsey has a statistic where it's, 10 years of e-commerce development were compressed into just a few months. Satya Nadella said that, in just a few months, we got 2 years of digital transformation happening. So it has been an incredible acceleration of technology that we've experienced. And then frankly, a lot of the folks that we've been working with, a lot of the business leaders, our own organization, and then even the education world, teachers, I mean, most people were kind of caught a little bit flat-footed in the sense of like, wow, we've been maybe doing Zoom, WebEx, Teams here and there, but to really have most of our interactions in a video or kind of a conference setting is just, I mean, that was a huge transition, across many areas. Like I actually, some of my kids are in kindergarten or they were in preschool, and so we actually like the preschool teachers as an example, they never expected to be teaching online. And so because it's super hands-on, it's very interactive, and so for them they were just like, wow, this is a completely new world. So I actually did some training for them for just like the basics of how just getting up to speed, because there were some professions that kind of sometimes use more virtual tools, but it's just been a huge change for so many others. And so one of the questions you asked is how, like, what are the main things that changed? I would say number one is just being on video. Like I know now we call this we talk a lot about Zoom fatigue, but just at the very beginning, just using video more often was a huge deal. Like some people didn't have cameras maybe on their laptop, or they didn't have a good background. Now, for the most part, it is generally expected to at least have the capability to do that at least in most situations that I've been in across different industries. And so that in itself requires a completely or kind of an advanced skill set of how do you manage on video, how do you interact differently, how do you make eye contact with the camera, backgrounds, all that kind of stuff. So that's sort of, you asked about the basics. That is really the main thing that we're seeing is just being comfortable in a video call type of environment.
Yeah, and if you think about it, this is really, like, if I really stop and think about that, the fact that we moved to video in such scale globally, right? Globally, both in the business world and in the education sector and many more, just for a year, and in that scale was like, wow, that was quick. Like that was really quick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because some of our clients, we were kind of urging them to make some, or kind of working with them to do some digital transformation work. And right before COVID hit, some of them were saying, well, we have so many other priorities, and it's like, it's a little bit tough to make some of these implementation decisions. But then when COVID hit, it's just incredible how much mobilization, how quickly pretty much all of our clients were able to go virtual. And that's not just, talking in meetings with their colleagues, it's different kinds of interactions with their customers. Like, I mean, especially on the manufacturing and industrial side, a lot of them had to, like travel there to do demos and like show hands-on experiences with their product. And now they had to find a way to do it virtually. And there's a lot of very creative ways that we're seeing pop up that, where people do that. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Just the quickness of it all was just incredible. But it shows us that we can pivot quickly. And if we just do that more proactively going forward, we can keep doing that even without another, huge pandemic or something else hitting us.
Yeah, the question is whether or not we really want it, because at least from the way we are wired, I don't think that this is how we work. I mean, people are we normally say, hey, we like to change, we are so agile, on and on and on, but deep inside of us, change is dangerous. So yeah, I mean, that is, let's not even get in there. However, let's go deeper into the tech world, because there are just so many major technology shifts that are potentially coming. The fact that we have VR, AR, as you mentioned, 3D, the blockchain technology underneath, like many things, like overall blockchain itself. What do you see there? Like, how big is it? What do you see there? Let's just start somewhere, like let's just start somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the pain points, and you mentioned, we're not wired to work this way. We kind of want to go back, kind of get that sense of humanity and connection back. And one of the ways that people are trying to do that, at least in the world that we're in today, is to kind of go beyond the 2D screen and try to find, almost recreate that immersion of being with people, being in the same room. And that is where VR can really come in and create that experience. So right now, for example, there are platforms like AltSpace VR where we did some experimentation with that at the MVP Summit last year. We also, there was a huge conference for educators in VR about this time last year, where pretty much, many people came in with a headset, but many people came in on their PC as well. But the point is it's kind of like a game type environment, or it looks like a game in the sense that everybody's an avatar. And at first it may seem a little bit, silly or funny, but very quickly, what's interesting is you kind of get that, even if I see you as an avatar, if you keep talking to me and I am interacting with you, I can sort of relate to you as if you're a real person very quickly. Like the avatar, the silliness kind of goes away very, very quickly in that environment. And what's interesting is, especially if you're wearing a VR headset, you feel like you're in the room, right? Like I turn around and I see somebody over there talking at that table. I see somebody over here talking, at the at the metaphorical or maybe the literal water cooler. And so I can kind of, especially with networking events, I can kind of go over there, have a conversation, walk over there, have another conversation. So you can almost recreate that networking experience and get just a little bit more of a sense of humanity. And I think as the hardware costs and the barriers go down, that's where we're going to see, an explosion of these kinds of events that are expected to be immersive and, where we can get that sense of community back.
Yeah, for sure. Like I remember, by the way, you're talking about VR right now, but I remember, and let's then jump to the AR part. I remember it was like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it may have been like 6 or 7 years ago. And we were in Romania at a conference in Cluj-Napoca, and there was someone from Microsoft who actually brought one of the first like builds of Microsoft's HoloLens. Like these were just very confidential things back then, and he allowed us to try them out in a ballroom, right? So it was a huge ballroom, and so he said, hey, try this out. And I remember when it was my turn to try them out, it mapped the whole room, right? So this is now things happening in your room and not the virtual room or the virtual reality. And the craziest part, and this was 6 to 7 years ago, maybe, the craziest part was that once it was so immersive it was so able to fake the reality that the craziest part, at least for me, was when I removed them. Like, I didn't believe that some objects that I was seeing in that same room somehow disappeared. And for in the first 30 seconds or a minute, obviously something in my brain was telling me, that's strange. You were seeing something else before a second. There was a cat out there, and now you don't see it. And it's so crazy when you experience this. And I was like, wow, if that thing, as you said, the cost is lower and it become potentially just part of a glass of your sunglasses or whatever, like if that becomes that small, wow, that is really a big deal. I don't even see a reason why I would remove this. You know, it's crazy. What are your thoughts about AR? What do you see
Yeah,
there?
I mean, so a few things. First of all, actually, sorry, can we cut it? I thought I
Absolutely.
thought I got out of Slack, but I literally just got a notification, and
Go ahead, remove it.
I just don't.
What are
I
your
just
thoughts
wanted,
about AR?
yeah. Oh, sorry. Um, I just signed out of the whole thing. All right, here we go. Um, so a couple of thoughts come to mind, and that's a really great story. So thank you for sharing that. Well, first of all, the place where this is going is contact lenses, right? There's a company called Mojo Vision now that's very well funded, where they are now developing the technology to basically have that be always a part of you. And then of course Elon Musk would probably want to do implants later on to kind of create these effects straight away for us. But absolutely, I mean, that is where we're going, is a place where we have the ability to kind of manifest these objects, and others have the ability to manifest these objects in front of us. And then if you think about the implications for presentation design, I mean, that is a completely new paradigm of how you create experiences and presentations. Like it's not just a 2D screen, but it's like you design objects around people, and maybe they're triggered by looking at something, or maybe they're triggered by them doing something or saying something. There's just so many possibilities there in terms of presentation design, experience design. And as you mentioned, it's super powerful in terms of just the emotional and kind of blending the real and the virtual, because it's a virtual screen, but it leaves a heck of a stronger impression on you than just seeing, a PowerPoint slide or like a 2D video. So that's kind of one thought. And then, the other thing I just wanted to say is I completely agree, is just kind of getting back to reality is that's a huge issue. So like if I attend a networking event, it's interesting because I feel like I'm literally in a room, in like a room networking with people, like a after party or something like that. I take off the headset and it's like, boom, I'm in my basement. And it's just like that kind of, it's a little bit jarring to be like, wow, I literally feel like I was just teleported back into reality. And it does take me a little bit of time to kind of like get back to reality. But at the same time, it's great because I didn't have to travel, right? So it's like and then I can hop back into another, thing, and halfway around the world again. So it's a completely new world, I think, that's about to unfold for us.
Yeah, for sure. Like, because we can talk about VR and AR probably for the next 30 minutes without any problem at all. I'm just wondering, because one of the other things that I believe are like, just you can see how big that is and how big it will be for presentations. There were already some tests obviously done with this, and I'm talking about holograms. Obviously Microsoft did some work there. Some guys at the TED conference did some work there, right? But like, what have you seen anything interesting in the hologram space? Any developments that kind of get us closer, if you wish, to that reality, to us just seeing holograms at, let's say, conferences, or us being able to be holograms at some point? Like, what are the latest and greatest tech companies out there or something?
Sure. Um, so first of all, I'll say that most like what we say holograms right now are really kind of the Pepper's ghost effect. And I actually have a video on this on my YouTube channel. I get a lot of corrections when I use the word hologram. So I just wanted to put that caveat out there. But using that more kind of colloquially or informally, I think you're absolutely right. This is a really big trend or it's going to be an even bigger trend as we have more hybrid events, because I think people have realized the value, regardless of how you feel about kind of this, extremely virtual environment, most people have realized that they can at least get some efficiency by not traveling. So travel is, it's going to come back, but it's not going to come back exactly in the same way. So there are going to be people who, they could teleport into one place, they can teleport into another place, very kind of back to back, just like you're joining a Zoom call here and you have back to back Zoom calls. You could have back to back sort of hollow presence events that you do. There's a company that we mentioned actually in our white paper with the Presentation Guild, which we wrote that last year, but it's still super relevant if anyone wants to check that out. There's a company called Art Media that is in Canada, and they do basically holographic telepresence. And essentially the way that works is you're in a green screen room and you're shooting with a bunch of cameras on the green screen, and then they have kind of a set that they can ship it to you kind of to the location of the conference, and then you show up as the hologram, even though you're kind of in the green screen in one of their studios. So, you talked about how this is going to be growing. I think we're all eventually going to have a room like that in our house where we can, we have the green screen with us, and then we can teleport. Like, it's going to be democratized. You don't have to like actually go to one of their offices. I think they have like maybe 7 or 8 or 10 locations. You can just do it from your home, and then you can teleport into one hybrid meeting, another hybrid meeting, etc. So right now it is it's pretty enterprise or very kind of large scale driven, like Tony Robbins has done one. And there's been a number of celebrities who have been recreated with holograms. But I think it's coming to the average person. And hey, if anyone wants to do it on a super small scale, kind of get the Pepper's ghost effect, I have a video for that too on my YouTube channel. But I think it's coming. It's the democratization for sure.
And that will be big though. I mean, if that happens, but why wouldn't it happen in, let's say, in the next 10 or 15 years? Like, if you think about it, it's not that impossible. I mean, 10 years is nothing more or less, and yet you're seeing how technologies evolve. And yeah, 10 years ago, wow.
Absolutely.
The only thing that I'm currently thinking about when I start exploring those new worlds is how exciting this whole thing would be. Like, that is so exciting to be part of this, exactly this moment. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think, right now I'm doing some work and some, kind of mini sessions on volumetric video. So we're working with companies like MetaStage and Avatar Dimension, and we are kind of getting some knowledge together around what is the future of volumetric video. And by the way, volumetric video is like, it's basically it's used in a lot in entertainment and video productions right now. So like you film somebody in a 3D way. So you have not just their face, and body, but you can see that person from all angles. And then you can put that into an augmented reality experience or a virtual reality experience. And then people can, for example, on their phones, recreate or bring a fashion model who's been kind of doing a runway show, and they can bring that into their homes, and they can see that from a 360 kind of perspective. They can like turn the phone around, they can kind of, you know, manipulate the video however they want. And so that I think is also going to start becoming democratized, where there's going to be apps where you can take that kind of video yourself and then kind of transport yourself as a presenter into somebody else's world. So that's not exactly holograms, but that's kind of the same sort of, you know, the same purpose, I guess, is like taking a digital version of yourself and putting that into, you know, somewhere else.
Yeah, if we have to go listening to you say, just listening to all of that, I cannot stop thinking of, okay, there are obvious pros to all of this, like there are so many benefits, but what are the cons here? Like, is there anything that we should be all mindful and careful of and careful about? Because there we can obviously overuse it, right? And if we just go all in on technology, it may get a little bit, we may get to a certain point which is like, okay, this is way too much now, right? We completely forgot who we are, we completely stopped interacting or whatever. Like, have you thought about like, okay, is there a line? Like, where do we stop here?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's such a great question. I guess like when I think of technology, I think of it almost as like if you use the metaphor of a knife. So you could be the greatest chef and you can use it to make the most beautiful, delectable dishes and make people happy. And then you can also use that knife to like stab someone, like, you know, do a lot of really bad stuff with it. So I guess I always like to focus on kind of the chef aspect of it, but totally understanding that there's, you know, very nefarious things that can be done. And I think like if we do explore that, what's interesting to me is like just digital identity, how that's going to be changing, and copyright, basically. You know, like for example, right now there was, I I just saw something where, you know, there's been research around how you can, you know, how you can basically say what like what kind of image you want. So like, let's say, what were some of them? Like if let's say you say giraffe and snail, like I want a giraffe and snail combination, and it just like boom spits out a giraffe, like 10 like 100 different versions and different styles of a giraffe snail. So like, you know, because the digital world, I mean, every pixel is, you know, completely changeable. I think, you know, as that kind of technology, as you see the intersection of AI and visual communication, and then also, you know, deep fake technology, as that starts to become really, you know, out there and more accessible, then, you know, like you can make, I think soon we'll be able to make videos of, you know, ourselves or really anyone saying anything. And then what's the implication for, you know, law enforcement or ethics or politics? I mean, that's going to be a whole thing. And then you're going to have to develop AI to kind of catch the AI manipulation. And that's going to be kind of its own thing as well. And then another issue is like you know, you were talking about blockchain. One of the things that we've been talking about with some of our clients is the kind of digital assets, and like how do you sell digital assets and then put them on the blockchain so that you can kind of certify that it is the one asset that is out there and that you own. And then I think at some point, and I think there's companies that are already doing this, like your avatar could be kind of your own, and then, you know, kind of set as yours, and then that can't be used by anyone else. So I think just the whole like digital commerce or maybe virtual reality commerce, that's going to be a whole thing. It's like selling art, selling clothing, and just imagine the implications for brands here. And then I think for kind of in the presentation space, what that's going to do is it's going to give you a lot more assets to kind of play around with, but it's also like, I think the question of copyright is going to be very, it's going to be transformed because, like how can you use like various assets, or like if you make an AI based asset, who owns that, and like what's the copyright implication there? And so I'm hoping that the lawmakers can kind of catch up to this space and kind of like, kind of really understand how to at least be part of the conversation here, because it's going to be a super fast moving space in terms of regulation and the implications.
Yeah, I cannot imagine how regulators will move with that speed. Today, I just cannot see how that will happen, but hopefully it will, because if they are somehow able to move, and I'm speaking, I think, for more or less probably every single country out there, for sure for Bulgaria, I can say, yeah, for sure. But I would probably say that the US also, I mean, easily.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they are able to move with that speed, I think that a lot more other issues on that level will be fixed too, right? It won't be just the AI, VR stuff that's happening in the world in that moment. Okay, I have one. You started with something that caught my attention, that, hey, you will need completely new skills in here. Like if you're building presentations right now and you're building them in Apple Keynote or PowerPoint or whatever, both of us are PowerPoint MVP, so let's start with PowerPoint maybe. So if you're using PowerPoint or any other for that matter, then you need to rethink your skills, right? Because especially on the design end, a lot of things will change. And it won't be that same world anymore in terms of design. Obviously, the design concepts and fundamentals will be there, right? But what are the skills that you think designers all across, and even maybe business professionals, because there are a lot of people who are business professionals who are listening to this one, would need to more or less adapt to this new world in order for them to create in the future truly effective presentations? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so the most fundamental and way to kind of really get ready for the future is what I call to think and design in 3D, because right now I think a lot of design is still very flat focused, very kind of screen focused. But I think there's an opportunity to use, for example, more 3D models in presentations. I think it's a little bit challenging because I think the access to 3D models is not quite there. I know Google Poly just is going to be shutting down soon. But like just using 3D models and being able to kind of incorporate them in more creative ways, I think that's going to be a huge skill. And if you can do that in your kind of flat or on-screen presentations, that's going to help you then get comfortable to be able to take them off screen. So another kind of, once you kind of play around with 3D and know how to kind of incorporate into your designs and even customize. So like even something like Paint 3D, you can stick a 3D model in there, you can customize it with like what they call stickers, and like just put like maybe your own image on it. Like I was playing around with this for an all hands meeting for our organization, and I took a 3D TV and I just put one of our leaders into the TV, just a picture. And so it just made for a really interesting experience because the TV can turn around because it's a 3D model. So it kind of reveals that person. And so, I mean, it's a tiny thing, but like being able to customize 3D models and be able to use them effectively and like zoom into them. Like many people don't realize that PowerPoint in particular gives you the power to like if you have a model of a building, like you can zoom into the building and then you can turn the building around. So you can almost do like a maze experience or something like that, as part of your presentation. I actually haven't seen very many, if any, people actually doing that. So I think like just getting that comfort would be, will already set you apart as a designer, presenter, or, leader in this space. So that's kind of step one. And then step two is play around with a 3D platform. So I currently recommend Frame VR because it's currently in beta. So anybody can sign up for an account. It's super easy to use. And you can just like bring in 3D models and you can put them like around the room, and you can put images on the walls. Like you can make it almost like a virtual gallery or something like that. You can put like a statue of a lion, or like you could put a huge 3D model of like somebody, at your work. There's so much that you can do there, and it takes, it's not a small learning curve, but it's so important to get there, because right now, like I was talking to folks who are teaching students in design, like the students right now who are in school, they're learning this stuff. So it's kind of like, if you're not thinking and designing in 3D, you're going to be eventually kind of left behind, or at least behind the curve. So now is the time to really dig in and start experimenting, so that way when kind of it hits mainstream, you are one of the top and not, left in the dust.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with what you're saying. I mean, 3D is obviously the next thing on so many levels. And the cool part is that, as you said, it's still there is a learning curve. But I think that a few years from now, like everyone will be able to build like this drag and drop approach, more or less. Like there will be platforms and tools that will allow everyone to build those immersive 3D experiences. Obviously not on the level that a 3D expert, 3D modeler or whatever will be able to do, right? In a team of, let's say, 3D person plus a few designers plus whatever, but still we'll be able, in the same way that we can create ourselves very nice presentations, not as they were designed by presentation designers. I think that a lot of people will be able to actually create those 3D worlds for themselves and make them part of their presentations, or make the presentations actually those 3D worlds, which is exciting. I mean, again, that is exciting. Obviously, it's a new skill, but as you said, learn it now, or I mean, otherwise you have a problem for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, just to kind of use one of your examples of, just designing a deck or something like that. Like instead of, you could send somebody like a PowerPoint or a keynote deck, right, to kind of look through. Why not send them a link to a virtual gallery that basically has the slides up on the walls, and the person can kind of browse through, and it's one click, you get in there and you look. And it's just, I think everyone right now is just so kind of, video call fatigued, that anything that you do to break it up, and even if it's not the most polished, even if it's not, doesn't look like it's been done in Unity by a game designer, people appreciate that, and they're going to say, wow, like I've never, or, I've never seen anything like this before, or wow, you're one of the first to actually do this. And people will appreciate the effort, even if it's not polished. So that's why like experimentation and diving in is key.
Yeah, for sure, you differentiate easily. I mean, no one is doing this. No one is still doing great presentations in first place. So not to mention 3D stuff. I mean, yeah, it's not no one, all right, but it's almost nobody. So let's be clear here. All right. I don't know for you, but it's already 40 or 45 minutes. This is going very quickly. Time is just, wow. Let us know, do you have somebody on top of your head that you think that we need to invite to this podcast that we didn't have already? Like anyone that made an impression on you, maybe someone that's, I don't know, who is working on the future of presentations from the technical point of view, like somebody that is in one way or the other connected to the presentation world, that you very quickly, just once you hear that question, you're like, this person.
Well, I think I have two different recommendations.
Let's go.
is, I mean, this is, I actually don't have a whole list of everybody who's ever been on, but if you haven't had Nancy, I mean, not to be like super, I'm sure everyone's mentioned her, but the angle that I really like about Nancy's story is how she over the years has pivoted her business to adapt to the changing environment. So it's not just her, you know, design prowess that is so impressive. It's her ability to kind of see the future and see where it's going and how she needs to transform. And I think she would be able to give like really firsthand experience about what kinds of new skills, you know, designers or people working very, very closely with, you know, in that space, you know, need to have. So
Right.
that's one. And then another one, or another kind of couple, is Taylor and Camille from Nuts and Bolts Speed Training. They do some really cool stuff around shortcuts and kind of just hacks that people have
Yeah.
never even heard of. And it's just
Yeah.
even I've seen them at conferences where the Microsoft team is just, you know, like they haven't seen some of the hacks that they come up with. So that is definitely a couple to consider.
For sure. We haven't got any of those people on the podcast, so that's now, see, that's now a thing. So I need to try harder for sure with Nancy. I tried to get her for the conference, but for some reason they declined. She was busy or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, for sure the team at the Nuts and Bolts is just, yeah, the what they're doing in regards to especially to productivity is mind-blowing. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know, sometimes I ask myself when I first saw their work, and for everyone who is listening, just go to YouTube and just put in Nuts and Bolts PowerPoint and it will show up for sure. But how are they finding those shortcuts? That's madness. I mean, it is mad. It is crazy, the shortcuts they know and how they find them. I mean, kudos to both of them. It is just brilliant. It is brilliant. Anyway, last question on my end. Where can people find more about what you're doing, and what is the best platform also for people to connect?
Sure. So I would say the two are LinkedIn and YouTube. So we can post those in
For
the
sure.
podcast notes. And then, of course, I want to give another shout out to the Presentation Guild, because they have so many folks that kind of can help you stay on the cutting edge, kind of both on the tactical design side and also kind of on the more macro strategic side. And then we can post the white paper there as well, because it's still very relevant.
All right, I'm taking notes. As you can see, post the white paper. All right. I always take notes during podcasts because otherwise I'll forget completely everything. If it's not out there, if it's not in my OneNote, it doesn't exist. It's like if it's not in my calendar, it won't happen. Like
Yeah.
that is the same rule more or less applies.
Single source of truth.
Absolutely. I have created a very cool structure that works for me on OneNote for every podcast episode, and I have places where I just fill in, you know? It's like a very well done template in a way. Wow, Yulia, thanks for joining. That made me also think, you know. That also made me think. Thanks for joining. I really enjoyed that one. And it really made me think. Yeah.
Great. That is my goal, is to just kind of stretch thinking and inspire people to start experimenting and really kind of paving the way to their own future. So hopefully some folks will start to experiment with some new things.
Absolutely. Everyone, the LinkedIn profile, the YouTube channel, the present link yet again to the Presentation Guild, plus link to the white paper for the future of presentations is and will be in the show notes of this episode, so you can check them out. Again, let's thank Yulia for joining us, so we can speak about the future of presentations for who knows, like maybe many hours. But if someone has any comment, not question this time, but comment, idea, why not even a question, let us know on social media, right? Wherever you found that episode, shoot us a message, ask, comment, give ideas. Where should the future of presentations go? Do you have some creative ideas? maybe there is somebody that will see it and do it. Who knows? I mean, you never know. So in the meantime, also check out our website 356labs.com and see what we are doing, obviously. And let's not forget also Present to Succeed, our conference. We need to figure out how to bring in Yulia for the next event, but that will be something that I will figure out later on after this podcast. This is the conference that we organize, which more or less turned out to be the biggest event in our space. It's still not immersive, Yulia, but we'll make it happen, like it will go there. It will go there at some point. It will go into the immersion. Again, thanks for listening, everyone. And in case you found this episode useful, subscribe to the podcast, and why not even leave us a review on iTunes, because it's still the most popular platform out there, or share it with a friend. We would appreciate it. Thanks again, and see you in the next one. Bye.